Welcome to the Shabbat Channel, a taste of CSAIR in your inbox. We wish that we could be with you in person, but for now we think this is the next best thing. So check out this week's episode for music from an amazing artist and Torah from our own CSAIR community. For now, you'll have to supply the Kiddush. Shabbat Shalom.
Hello, friends, and thank you, Rabbi Katz, for the invitation to share a few words of Torah in advance of Shabbat. I've always loved storytelling. I think it was this that drove me originally to studying history. I've always been fascinated by the complexity and the power that we have to narrate the past in ways that then shape what the past actually means, not just influencing our understanding of what came before us, but even understanding what's ahead of us. I had this great teacher in high school, Dr. LeBlanc. He had a great line he used every year at the beginning of modern European history. Quote, "On January 1st, 1492, the Renaissance began." I think this was his way of poking fun at the periodization of our curriculum, but also, more importantly, showing us that we had instincts for needing historical stories to be neater than they actually are. We, of course, all knew better even at the time that the Renaissance wasn't an event that started or ended in such a way, but even so, we're all susceptible to the instincts that make us organize time and history into clean categories. Stories are choices, sometimes practical and sometimes moral, about what we choose to include and what we choose to leave out. History oftentimes tells us more about the historian in question than it does about the past itself. I noticed something interesting along these lines in this week's Parsha, Vayechi. The main drama of the Parsha is Jacob's speech to his sons and his deathbed instructions to them, which occupy virtually all of chapter 49 of the book of Genesis, and the previous chapter 2 if you include his blessings for Joseph's children, his grandchildren. Most of the times that I've read the story, I've paid attention to the ways that it parallels and departs from the foregoing versions of the story in the Bible, Abraham and then Isaac on their deathbeds, and the story of who was the right inheritor of the birthright and what promises were being offered to them by their fathers. But there's something different in this story, and especially in the ways that Jacob's blessings of his sons also constitute interpretations of their lives. And these blessings actually fill in pieces of the book of Genesis with a deeper interpretation than we had gotten earlier. For instance, the Torah had used very economical language when describing the transgressions of Reuben, Jacob's firstborn son, who had slept with his father's wife, and now we get a fuller picture of how Jacob felt about it. The same goes with Shimon and Levi, who had committed the massacre against the people of Shechem. Now, in Jacob's narration, he's both filling out the story and deepening it with a moral interpretation, how he felt about it, including the implications that all of this past stuff has in how he envisions their future as leaders of the people of Israel. So instead of reading the story backwards, that is, comparing it to Abraham and Isaac, I think there's a better parallel forward. And that is, I think, the speech near the end of Moses' life, that is, the book of Deuteronomy. In other words, I want to suggest that this last chapter, this last story in the book of Genesis, serves for the book of Genesis the same function that the book of Deuteronomy serves for the whole Torah. An active, personalized summary put into a voice of the protagonist of the big drama that has gotten us until this point, a recapitulation of the main ideas and a signaling, I think this is really important, that we're on the verge of a new story. There's one strong textual cue right at the beginning of the speech. Jacob gathers his sons and says to him, "Gather around me, and I will tell you what will transpire for you in Acharit Hayamim, in the end of days." In other words, I'm not just telling you what came before, I'm summarizing your past so that you can understand your future. This phrase, Acharit Hayamim, only recurs again in the Bible in Deuteronomy. Moses uses the phrase to bookend his speech. It's used in Deuteronomy 4 and Deuteronomy 30. But more important for me than the literary cue here are the thematic ones. These speeches, Jacob's and Moses, do more than just mark the line for these two characters between their lives and their deaths. They both demarcate liminal spaces for the people surrounding them on their deathbeds. Moses' speech takes place as the Israelites are on the verge of entering the Promised Land. Jacob's family has just left that Promised Land and begun its sojourn into Egypt. More poignantly, the very identities of the peoples are also changing. Moses speaks to the Israelites as they are experiencing generational change, and as they're about to become a people whose identity for the first time is tied to this ancestral land that they're about to go into. Jacob's speech to his sons comes at a similar national liminal moment as they are on the verge of changing over from being just a family to being a nation. In fact, just a few chapters later, right at the beginning of the book of Exodus, in the first chapter, the sons of Israel, Bnei Yisrael, take on a new name. For the first time in the Bible, they get referred to as Am Bnei Yisrael, the nation of the children of Israel. This story, Jacob's telling them of the meaning of their past, is something entirely different when it's not just the incidentals of a particular family, but when it's imagined as part of the fabric of the founding myth of a new nation, one that's about to be born. Liminal moments are powerful opportunities for transformative storytelling. We don't just experience history, and narratives of meaning don't just emerge on their own. You need visionary patriarchs and matriarchs who can feel that sense of liminality, and they start narrating. Those are the moments of choices, of what we want to preserve from the past, and how we want that past to inform the future that we have the chance to shape. I'm not sure that our family totally realized as the pandemic was starting that we were in a liminal moment, but we sure have done a lot of storytelling in our house about that moment, and we've tried in this still liminality to not just understand our world, but to tell a story to our children, but with our children, about what we're experiencing. More importantly, maybe, we're going to be at another liminal moment soon, please God, when we feel that we are emerging out of this strange space and into another. It might not be that we're in a moment of total transformation of our nation and our people, but it's a liminal moment nonetheless. These are moments to tell stories and to craft meaning out of what we experience so that that meaning endures for us into times beyond this one. This is one of the Jewish people's gifts of agency, a gift that the Torah is modeling for us in this week's Parsha. Transitions are not just moments to be experienced, but opportunities for storytelling to be cherished, that our children afterwards will inherit, and so that they may understand. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom, CSAIR. My name is Eliana Light. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom. Very honored and blessed to be here with you, welcoming in this amazing Shabbat. First of all, every Shabbat is amazing or can be amazing. And second of all, we're moving into the new secular year. And it is also Shabbat Vayechi, the Shabbat of blessings, when Jacob blesses each of his sons, kind of half blessing, half prediction, right? That's kind of what we want in the new year. We want to know what's coming. We want to know what the predictions are. But it's a Shabbat of blessings. And one of my favorite midrashim, or group of midrashim, kind of has something to do with this week's Parsha. It's a bit of a stretch, but stay with me here. The question is, why do we whisper Baruch Shem Kavod when we say the Shema? There's the kind of historical answer, which is that the Shema and the Baruch Shem Kavod, we are told, were both said in the temple service because the Shema is from the Torah and Baruch Shem Kavod is not. One was said aloud while one was whispered. But in Judaism, we never just stop at one answer. We have an amazing array of midrashic stories to help explain. And one of these is that Jacob's sons surrounding him at the time of his death, he says, are you going to take care of this tradition? Are you going to keep it? Should I be worried about you? And they said, Sh'ma Yisrael, listen up, Dad. Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. God is one, we've got this. And Jacob smiled and said, Baruch Shem Kavod. So I invite you to take a big deep breath in and out. Take that moment for yourself going into this Shabbat. How can you be a blessing for others in this new secular year? But also take some time for yourself. This has a whisper along chorus, which you'll understand when we get there, but I hope you'll join in. In his last days, Jacob asked his sons to gather around. He wanted to ensure the faith in God was sound. Is there any division within your hearts, my sons? Oh, listen, Father Israel, our God is one. Jacob smiles and closed his eyes, breathed a great big sigh, and whispered, Baruch, Baruch, Shem Kavod, Malchut Ho, Leolam. Baed, blessed is the name of God's kingdom forever and ever. Moses heard the angels dancing and singing God's praise. He was so moved by their prayers that he brought the people their phrase. But people aren't angels, so we keep our voices low, because we wouldn't want those beings on high to know. So we smile and close our eyes, breathe a great big sigh, and whisper, Baruch, Baruch, Shem Kavod, Malchut Ho, Leolam. Baed, blessed is the name of God's kingdom forever and ever. On the holiest day of the year, we come before God without fear. We are hope, we are light, so we sing with all our might and voices. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Blessed is the name of God's kingdom